us on our live streaming sessions and new content uploads. For easy access to the CityTube page, scan the QR code on your screens, subscribe to the CityTube page, and voila! Unlimited content awaits you. Don't forget to subscribe to CityTube for amazing content from City TV and City FM. The sisters are back with more chic and spice than ever. Join the League of Exceptional Sisters as they come to the rescue of relationships with the all-new season of Sister Sister. Be it gut-wrenching personal secrets, jaw-dropping partner shenanigans, or the cringe-worthy deeds of family and friends, our sisters will be here to help you weave through the simplest and most complicated relationship issues. Sister Sister airs every Thursday at 7 p.m. on 97.3 City FM and every Friday at 9 p.m. on City TV. Sister Sister is sponsored by Kel Kids Toothpaste, the Ghana AIDS Commission, and Onga.
So welcome back to What the Papers Are Saying. My name is Vivian Kai Loco. We're going to give you an idea of the big stories for the week, how the various news outlets reported those stories. So 3 stories made some headlines this week, starting with the EC chairperson in Parliament over a proposed new CI from the Commission that made a lot of news for this week. Also, the former President Mahama launched this campaign, and of course, our neighbors Nigeria went to the polls and have elected a president. So let's start with the Electoral Commission's proposed CI and see how the various news outlets reported that story. Let's start with the Daily Graphic. It says, continuous voter registration, Ghana card guarantees voter integrity. Let's go to another newspaper. That's The Finder. We'll stay with it a bit longer because it reported 2 different angles from that story. The first says NIA owes creditors $117 million. $65 million has to be paid before it can continue to print cards. And also 100 million cedis released to NIA to clear part of its debt to creditors. Let's go back to the Daily Graphic on that story and another angle as reported by them. They say minority rejects Ghana card as sole document for voter registration. We'll move away from the Daily Graphic. We go to another newspaper. That's the Chronicle. It says Ghana card will not be used to vote in 2024 elections. That's the EC speaking. Away from that to the New Publisher, it says Ghana card will not replace voter card. EC boss assures Parliament. We move to another newspaper, that's the Daily Guide. It says Ghana card to prevent foreigners from voting. That's the EC chair speaking over there. We move to the Ghanaian Times. It says Ghana card as sole ID for voter registration. New CI won't disenfranchise any Ghanaian, EC chair assures. And then let's wrap up with a story with City Newsroom. Let's see how they reported the story. The first angle they had was EC's new CI will sanitize Ghana's electoral system. That's the majority speaking. And finally, from City Newsroom, NPP slums NDC for kicking against EC's proposed new CI. So that's how some of the major newspapers and websites reported the proposal from the EC for a new CI. Let's move to ex-President Mahama, who has launched his bid to run for president for the next general elections. And let's see the stories that came out of that. Let's start with the Daily Guide. They say Mahama begins 2024 campaign. And then we'll stay with City Newsroom and look at some of the angles around that. There's one that says, campaign launch, regional chairman declares support for Mahama. Another angle says, I will scrap payment of ex-gratia under Article 71. That's the ex-president speaking again. Another says, quote, clueless, unquote, Akufo-Addo has worsened Ghana's poverty levels. Mahama speaking again. Another angle to today's launch of his campaign bid says, I will assemble less than 60 ministers, deputies, if I win 2024 polls. This is Mahama speaking. And then this says, this is not time for trial and error. Ghana needs experienced leader, Mahama. And then finally on that, I am not happy Akufo-Addo has failed. Mahama speaking again. So those are some of the angles and how some news outlets reported ex-President Mahama's bid to run for president for the next general elections. We'll still stay with elections, but we'll go to Nigeria. They went to the polls on Saturday. Yesterday, the new president-elect of Nigeria was declared by INEC, and that's Bola Tinubu. So let's see how that story was covered by some media outlets in Ghana and indeed in Nigeria. So the Daily Graphic says, ECOWAS AU Commonwealth Observer Missions commend Nigerians. The Chronicle says, PDP, LP, ADC demand fresh election, want INEC chair to step aside. There's also Thugs disrupt coalition exercise in Jos, and government replies Obasanjo over his attack on INEC, all in the Chronicle. We move to the ABC News, and it says Tinubu breaks the 8 for APC in Nigerian elections. The Informer says Nigerian elections, Obasanjo accuses INEC, warns of looming danger. Let's come to City Newsroom. Let's see what we have there on this election. Well, we have Akufo-Addo congratulates Nigeria's president-elect Bola Tinubu. ChannelsTV.com says we won and will explore all legal means to reclaim our mandates. That's Peter Obi speaking there. Still on that website, is this what we spend billions to do? That's the question coming from Obi, condemning the conduct of the elections. And finally, from channelstv.com, Tinubu begins reconciliation move, sets up committees to meet Atiku, Obi, and Kwakwanso. So that's the three big stories, and as reported by various news outlets across the country. Let me come back to the studio and introduce my guests for tonight. Two gentlemen, both legal persons. Most of the stories today are pretty much around legal issues, so perfect match to have our discussion for today. I have with me Selam Adonu. He's here with City FM and City TV by day, by night. He's a lawyer. He's on a Saturday current affairs program, Big Issue, as well as on Eyewitness on radio on Fridays. Welcome.
Thank you, Vivian.
What the papers are saying. I also have another person by day on radio and TV, and by night a lawyer, Sky, Richard Sky. Also on radio every morning from 6:30 to 10 o'clock on the City Breakfast Show, and also joins us on most of our current affairs programs. Sky, welcome.
Thank you, Vivian. I'm honored to be here.
All right. I'm glad to have you guys here tonight. Thank you so much for making time to join me tonight. I believe we can start with the proposed new CI from the Electoral Commission. For those who are wondering what all this is about, Selam, let me start with you. Really, this CI, what is it seeking to do?
Well, thanks, Vivian. So when we talk about the CI, a CI simply means a constitutional instrument. Those delegated things, which is fashioned out of a delegated authority. And so there are various forms of them. We have the legislative instrument, we can have an executive instrument, but it's a constitutional instrument, which means that it is a delegated authority given by a body, in this case the constitution, to another body to make laws, So it takes its power directly from the constitution. So there are certain bodies or there are certain things that the constitution acts specifically constitution. So the EC must operate by law, and the way it does its job often is through the regulations, etc. And the creation of source from the constitution. So they need a constitutional instrument in order to undertake that job. So, the courts, for example, also take a similar authority from the constitution. So you see CI 47, for example, which is a rules book for the High Court, CI 16 for the Supreme Court, CI 19 for the Court of Appeal, CI 59 for the District Court, etc. The SHRAJ also has a similar thing. So in this case, the EC, we've heard about them many times. They've had the CI 91, CI 71 or 72, CI 126, etc. So the CI is where they pick their rules from. That's where their regulations are from. And so there is a way that the rules come to be or the regulations come to be. There's a normal way of making laws. That's what Parliament does. Act of Parliament to be laid in the House, it will be debated, a whole lot of things. But in terms of this delegated, these rules made from delegated authority, you have to lay it in Parliament. Article 11 is clear. You have to lay it in Parliament. It has to be laid in Parliament for 21 days. Okay. And Parliament can really not do much about it. What Parliament can do is to either accept it or reject it. Either annul it or accept it. So that's important. So I realize that Parliament has tried to put together an innovative scheme. They call it the pre-laying debate also. So that is where they try to look at what is in there. If there are things they want to change, they tell the body to go and change it and bring it. Once it is laid, they cannot do anything about it. They can only look at it and see if it's in conformity with the Constitution, if it imposes certain financial obligations on the state, which it shouldn't do. Look at those things. Once it spots any of those things, it can go ahead and annul it, and it annuls it in its entirety.
So it can't do bits and pieces.
No, you annul it in its entirety, or you accept it in its entirety.
Right.
They can go rework it and bring it back. It starts.
I think the technical word would be to reject it.
Okay, to reject it, but the Constitution actually mentions the word annul. Okay. To annul or reject it, they can go rework it and then bring it back. Okay. It has to restart the journey, the 21-day journey again. So what we have is a situation where the EC says it wants to do a certain, number of things. So, for example, Article 42 talks about the right to vote and who can vote. Article 42 of the Constitution tells us about the right to vote. So it talks about who can vote. The one who can vote should be a citizen of Ghana. It should be 18 years old and above. It should be of a sound mind. And then that person must be fulfilling all the above criteria, should entitle him to be registered to vote. Now, however, is now with what, how you identify somebody as a citizen. That will enable him to be entitled to register. You get me? So the identification of a person as a citizen has now become a problem. So in what the law is actually is that you show your Ghana card or a passport, or in the absence of these, you have somebody that we call a guarantor. To vouch for you, to say that indeed you are a Ghanaian. It could be your parents, it could be somebody to vouch for you to say you are a Ghanaian. Now the EC is telling us that guarantor system they want to do away with. And they tell us that they now want to depend solely on the National Identification Authorities card, which we call the Ghana card, which is being proposed as a one-stop shop for everything by law, which is a nice thing. And technically, I don't think there's any problem with that. But the difficulty, as many have expressed, is that we are not there yet. You can use a Ghana card as and when it is available. Indeed, the law itself, what's the name? LI 211, which is a National Identity Register Regulation 2012, Regulation 71 says that a national identity card issued to an individual shall be used for the following transactions where identification is required. It lists a number of transactions: passport, driver's license, etc., and registration of voters. Now, the key word there is issued. So what happens if I have not been issued with a card?
With a card, yeah.
So I would have tried my best to get issued with a card, but the circumstances of the it's impossible for me to be issued with a card,
so
as we have now.
The problem is access
to the card. So now we have not scaled the problem of access. Now EC is seeking to bring a law that will make this thing not a lot of people, many people have access to as the sole document for the registration to vote. And many have said that that clearly is a problem. Using the Ghana card to vote or everybody may not have it, but if accessing it is easy, that shouldn't be a problem. But here is a case: there are people who have been in queues for 2 years, 7 months, they've not had it. And you saw what happened during the people massing up at the NIA offices just to get cards. They couldn't get, a lot of them couldn't get it. That exercise ended. Now we are going to pass a law to say that the NIA card or the Ghana card is the sole document you can use to register.
Okay.
That is the difficulty that a lot of people have expressed. And indeed, Article 45E, which deals with the Electoral Commission and what it is supposed to be doing, the functions of the Electoral Commission. 45E says what? The Electoral Commission shall have the following functions. E, to undertake programs for the expansion of the registration of voters. And many have said, which indeed appears to be the case, that instead of undertaking programs to expand, the registration of voters, this particular action may risk, restricting or narrowing or constricting, the registration of voters. Because if you go ahead to make this the sole document for registration and I do not have it, then it means I miss out. Okay. The argument on the NIA side, both of them, is that the NIA is able to register the people in 6 months. But the point is, the NIA has been saying this since last year. But
okay.
we have.
No, I want to hang on with those ones, and let's interrogate what the law says in terms of the documentation, and then we'll come to the minority that has raised a number of questions around the CI that has been presented to Parliament. Let me start with you, Sky, on that. What is the constitution or the law saying around the documents that we can use to vote? Now, people are not happy with the passport being thrown away. But over the years, we've seen some documents that have been struck out. The birth certificate was struck out, the NHI card was struck out, among other things. Why is this such a big deal in terms of the passport being struck out as well?
No, in this case, they are talking about limiting registration or the source document being only the Ghana card. And the difficulty with that is to lay down in law a rigid position that says that without the Ghana card, you cannot go and register and be on the National Voters Register. And Selim has done a fantastic job explaining the general position of the law. You see, the difficulty with that is that it seems to put a damper or force down the full breadth of Article 42 of the Constitution, which empowers a citizen who is 18 years and over to go to the is properly constituted out there. He doesn't have any problems. And he's 18 years and over, and he's a Ghanaian. Those are the three broad requirements that you need to meet in order to be registered to vote. Now, the difficulty, as Selim explains, is that people have always been suspicious of who comes to them and claims that he's a Ghanaian. So the position has been constantly articulated, especially by the NPP, that there are certain people who are West Africans, who are not citizens of Ghana, who come into our country during, national elections, registrations before then, claim to be Ghanaians, register and get to vote. Now, till date, we've not seen an overwhelming prosecution of people who have come to make these claims. And yet, you hear Dr. Bawumia made this claim previously, and the attacks were directed at people from the Volta region. And the suggestion is that they cross the border from neighboring Togo and come and take part in our elections. But all of us are well aware that before the white people came, we were one people, generally.
But are they technically citizens of Ghana? If they are around border towns and they're not Ghanaians,
I have a long list of people, inexhaustive, that I can mention, who are family members of mine, who are in the Republic of Togo. And in fact, there are people in this country from other parts of the country, including the Ashanti region, and then also Western region, and many. And in fact, that was the basis for the passage of the ROPA, the amendment, which the NPP led when John Kufuor was in office, to extend the vote to Ghanaians outside the shores of this country. So we recognize that there are Ghanaians who are not resident in Ghana. And the effort is made, or has been made by the NPP administration under Kufuor, to extend the vote to them. But as we speak, we have not operationalized it, although the High Court and the Supreme Court have made pronouncements on this particular matter. Now, let me get back to the question of why this thing is being done. The NPP is back to its default position that there are West Africans who take part in our elections, and that all the efforts that had been made recently in the 2020 era, when a new voters register was put together, there are still people who are on the register who ought not be there. Although soldiers were put at the border, firm grip on entry into the country in the name of securing the country against COVID. So you did not have Ghanaians who would otherwise have crossed over from Togo to register. You understand? So those people clearly have been excluded from the register. Now this step, which is being marketed as an attempt to ensure that, we ensure sanctity of the register, in my view, would disenfranchise a lot of people. The reason being that the moment you say the source document is only Bronx, living in New York, and you do not have the Ghana card, you cannot come to Ghana and register. And I find that objectionable. I find it unconstitutional. I believe it undermines the thinking of the framers of the Constitution, who believe that to the extent that you are Ghanaian, you are 18 years and above, and you are sound up here, you have the right to register and vote. Of course, I do not take anything away from the Electoral Commission, that under the Constitution of the Republic, they have the authority imposed by the Constitution to put out constitutional instruments which detail how they intend to give effect to the language of the Constitution under Article 45 and then Article 42 of the Constitution and related provision. But to the extent that this step they are taking goes to restrict how people get to be registered onto the voters' register, even when they qualify, I think that with the greatest respect,
somebody will say they can get access to the card when they go through the right system, when they come in from wherever they are coming.
No, but the question is, have we expanded access such that it is easy for the Ghanaian in Bunkurugu Yunyo to get access to the card? The same CI that they've taken to Parliament is saying that the EC would determine that the district assemblies or the headquarters, the district offices that we have around the country become the registration centers. There are people in this country who cannot even afford 1 Ghana cedi to move from district, or they cannot move from, say, Agaveji in my constituency, which is the Ketu South constituency, to Denu or Tokon, where the district offices or the municipal offices to register. These are people who are struggling. So beyond the issue of the Ghana card, there is also an issue of access to the center that would serve as, the area for registration. Yeah. So you have to move all the way from there. And if you don't have money, you cannot register and vote. I mean, what kind of logic is that?
But what was the EC seeking to do in restricting, pushing it to just the districts?
Well, so they call it continuous registration. So once they say it is continuous registration, it means it's an all year round registration. There are district offices, they work there. So they just set up a desk that come register. The idea, it's not bad. So that you do not have these things we see around, when they open, when it's time for limited registration exit, you see the busing of people, the struggles, the fights, etc. You don't see those things.
So it's seeking to cure a problem.
It's seeking to cure a problem. But in seeking to cure a problem, you don't create another problem that will be bigger. The political parties have said that you registering people in your office means that we will have to, or we may have to, get polling agents there. So they also oversee the process. Get polling agents there round the clock. That will be extra cost. Who will pay them? That will be extra cost for the polling agents. Will the EC pick up that cost? Of course, we can cross that bridge when we get there. But the question is, do you need to do all of that in this election? We are in the middle of a debt crisis. We are in the worst economic crisis in our history. There is debt exchange ongoing. We are begging, diplomats to go talk to China and co to forgive us debt or to exchange debt. Now, NIA, which has been saying they do not have money to print their cards have been locked up somewhere, owe to the tune of about 1.5 billion, $117 million. Now need say all of a sudden, finance minister who is still struggling to pay individual bondholders, he's going to find 100 million somewhere to give to NIA to start printing cards. What's the logic in that? Where are we in a hurry to? You just won an election with the same register. You won an election in opposition and came to power with a similar register. What is the point? And how many foreigners are even on the register? It is useless. It speaks to our lack of prioritizing what our needs are. As we speak right now, childhood vaccines, we've run out of childhood vaccines in this country. Honorable Suhuyini was in Parliament complaining that he's afraid schools in his community or in his constituency will close down because of the outbreak of measles. Why did we have outbreak of measles? Because we did not have vaccines. These are the things that should be engaging our attention. Indeed, the president who has been reputed to give nice lines, prior to coming to office, said that, we need a leader who thinks about the next generation, not the next election. The next generation doesn't have vaccines, but you're thinking about doling out 100 million cedis to NIA for registration of voters when it is not very necessary.
Okay.
It is not very necessary.
Hang on with your thoughts. I need to take a... We'll look at some other more things around this particular topic. You're watching What the Papers Are Saying. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Get 2 months of Showmax for the price of one. It's giving double any day. It's giving celebration Ankasa. All that scandal. It's giving the perfect storm. She. More epic thrills and detective vibes. You go feel, sa. It's giving what it's supposed to be giving and overdose. So subscribe now to get 2 months for only 16 Ghana cedis 99 pesos for a limited time. It's giving Showmax.
And you're welcome back to What the Papers Are Saying. The discussion on the table currently is a proposed new CI from the EC. The EC boss was in Parliament this week. Salome, you're making some points around whether we really need to do this.
Yes, I was trying to talk about the problems around this current arrangement. What's the point? They say if it ain't broken, you don't fix it. This is the register that brought you to power. The register really has no problem. And how many people, you know, the guarantor system they said is bad and so they want to change. How many people, you know, have had issues with it, or have they had issues with in respect of the guarantor system? It is less than 0.1, in fact 0.09. There will be problems everywhere. Are they telling? There will be problems everywhere. Are they telling? They can deny it. NIA card. When you dig, you find foreigners getting. I don't know.
But the EC boss believes that the Ghana card is more robust. In terms
I mean, there is no doubt about the robustness of the processes that have been put together to ensure that the Ghana card retains, you know, great credibility when it is pushed out there, the data that it has. But like with all systems, there will always be problems. People always find a way around, you know, systems. And Budekumsun once told me on the big issue that the only time that you see a Ghanaian thinking seriously, you know, when he was in Germany, was when he is or was thinking about beating the system. So you always have people thinking about how they want to beat the system. The question is, how can you deal with that in a way as not to frustrate a constitutional right? That is what we are talking about here. Article 42 says that if you are 18 years and above of sound mind and you are a Ghanaian, you are entitled to vote. Now, the question of how to identify who is a Ghanaian is where we have a problem now. And my position is that, yes, if the register has a problem, although you told us in 2020 that you have compiled the most credible register in the history of our country, right, or under the Fourth Republic, you come back to us now and you say that there are still problems with the register. There are minors on the register, there are foreigners on the register, and you want to improve it. Granted, if you want to improve it, take steps to improve it. But those steps,
so there's one of
yes,
them.
but yeah, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Those steps should not lead to exclusion of people who are 18 years and above, who are Ghanaians, who are sound, and are willing to register. It should not lead to their exclusion. And to the extent that this particular piece of legislation, proposed as it is seeking to achieve that end, I am roundly opposed to it. And let me also make the point that, yes, we can always aspire to make the Ghana card at some point become the routine, you know, document for getting access to these services. Yes, all these other things that the Ghana card does, they are things that are done not as of right and imposed by the Constitution. Many of them, for instance, if you want to travel outside this country, it's not a constitutional right that you want to travel outside the country, and so it is protected. So willy-nilly, the government should give you a passport, you know, for the purposes of traveling. Do you understand? However, the Constitution confers the right to vote. And anything, in my view, that asks to derogate from that is non-negotiable. And quickly, I think the point is made that, yes, we want to achieve a certain universality, which is what we want to ensure that when we say this is the data we are using, the data is credible. That is not achieved over time. That is not achieved just in one day. It is achieved over time. So what we should do is let's allow the guarantor system to remain, which is to say what? If you, Vivian, and you say you are my mother, and you walk into a polling station, and then you attest or you say that you are my mother and that you gave birth to me, and that I am a Ghanaian.
And you are a Ghanaian yourself.
And you are a Ghanaian yourself, and therefore qualified to do that, I should be entitled to be registered to vote. Now, if it turns out that you made a misleading claim and therefore deceived a public officer, the law of the land is that when you deceive a public officer in the line of his duty or duties, you can be prosecuted.
But by then, you would have gotten onto the system. By then, by the time I go through the process to ensure that you are not Ghanaian,
crimes are prosecuted.
You would have been, and isn't this what some of the things you are trying to cure with that?
You know, you can never have a foolproof system.
Should you clean?
But it's even a hypothetical situation we are painting. So one person, what is one person to 70 million people? What's the ratio? You know, the point really is that why do you base a law on assumption, on hope? NIA says that they hope or they think they can do it in 6 months. They can register 2 million people in 6 months. The same NIA said this last year. And people are in queues. As a friend was telling me, his friend has been in a queue for over 2 years. They haven't had a card. You get me? Replacement people, they've not had it. If we don't even know the modalities for somebody who has a card, but maybe on his way to register, misplaces the card. Does that person have to go start from square one? Or the person can just come, put his his fingers on the machine because it's already in the system, data will be pulled out, you know he's the one. What is the modality? Must he go and start all over? So I think that there's a rush for this. You don't make a law based on assumption. And this is elections we are talking about. When it comes to election, passions are high. Anytime, even in fact, when the NCA, when the SIM registration and crowds were at the NIA offices just for this Ghana card thing, you saw the confusion. Now it is going to be a political crowd at NIA offices looking for cards. Anybody who is there at that time is politically aware and knows why he wants the card. And that will not be the time for, you can't make a law based on assumption. There should be the certainty of the law. You now go and make the law that only, let me read out the specific thing they're trying to do, how it's been captured in the proposed CI. Said a person who applies for registration as a voter shall provide as evidence of identification the national identification card issued by the National Identification Authority. Every other means is blocked. I have a problem. Evidence of identification. Should it be evidence of citizenship or evidence of identification?
Yes,
every other system or every other means is blocked. Just this one. So what happens? Kenneth Furata releases 100 million to Kenatefa. He gets to the middle, 100 million gets finished. The people say, okay, we've locked the rest of the car. Actually fighting against the card being used for registration. The access is the problem. Yeah. And the access.
Whilst is you if you don't want to respond directly, I'll move to another question.
I just want to even fortify his position. Now look, what do we want to achieve? That we want to ensure that only Ghanaians are registering.
Yes.
But you cannot ensure that only Ghanaians get onto the register. It is impossible.
But you start somewhere, don't you?
But we started in 1992.
So at what point?
No, we started in 1992. So we started somewhere.
At what point do you want them to, use the card?
In solving a problem, you don't create a bigger problem.
Vivian.
In solving a problem, you don't create a bigger problem.
Okay.
And you see, like Stan made a fantastic point that a lot of the things that the NIA card is seeking to do, issuance of passports, issuance of driver's licenses, a bank account.
It's speaking to all the various institutions with
there's one of them, registration of voters. That is a constitutional right. The Constitution doesn't provide you, that doesn't guarantee owning, having a driver's license. It is not a constitutional right.
So how else can the EC clean the system or ensure that the foreigners don't get within this period for the next election?
We just talked about the NIA's system, which is quite robust. They can employ similar systems. They should strengthen their systems wherever they are. They should put their proper people who will not be compromised. That is what it is.
And then also, Selo, look, the current system says that when you come and you claim that you are the mother of ABCD, the person is to be entered on the roll. There are party agents there who dispute that. When they dispute it, there is a dispute resolution mechanism in place to ensure that the matter is dealt with. And the commission subsequently makes a pronouncement that, okay, we have investigated the matter and we have come to the conclusion that, yes, the claims you have made against this intended registration is valid, and therefore the process will not continue. Or it is invalid, and therefore we will not continue, we will continue with the process. If that system actually works, and I believe it works, because in the past it's been used in the past. So why not keep it going till we get to a point where it is possible for us to confidently say that everybody in Ghana, every citizen who is qualified to have access to the Ghana card has it, and therefore when they go to the center, they will not even be asked to produce Ghana card. when they ask you that what is the form of identification you have, because it is the default card you have, you submit it to the registration officer. Okay. But the idea that you want to lock out people simply because they do not have access to Ghana card, for me, is per se exemplary.
So this CI must be...
And the other point is that once this law outlaws the use of the guarantor system, tomorrow somebody will go to court, like we saw in the Abu Ramadan case, for the NHIS card. When it was outlawed, now somebody went to court to say that already there are people with the NHIS card in the register. Expunge their names from it. We may see a similar thing because
there's people
with the guarantor system,
other,
somebody then will go to court to say, okay, this is not allowed. This is a new this register. Those people are on it. It makes it impure. So let's get those names expunged. So we would have been going in circles. We wouldn't have been making progress. The final point I want to make is that I made a middle class of a country decide to do something, things work. We saw it during the debt exchange program. When it touched the individual bondholders, we saw them. We saw the advocacy. We saw all of that. This is even more crucial than the individual bondholders. If this happens and it goes south, it goes in a way that we do not want, we may not have a country. The middle class and the people of influence in society must speak up. It is not enough to sit down and think that you are fine, you travel out of the country when something happens, God forbid. This is the time to speak up. This is the only country we have, and we must ensure that we protect it and we do everything in our power to ensure that politicians don't take us for a ride. What at all is this for? What's the rush?
All right. Sky, I'll take your final comment on it.
Refine the voters register as much as you want, but there should not be any effort whatsoever to exclude people who do not have access to the Ghana card. It is a bad decision. It is a bad intention. We must not encourage it. If you owe the people who are doing the Ghana card, find the money and pay them. Let them continue to do their work. We do not have a problem with that. But you should not touch a protected right and seek to impose an obligation that is almost impossible on every Ghanaian who wants to go out there and vote.
All right, thank you, guys. Let's move to ex-President Mahama.
Yep.
Today we saw him in Ho launching his bid to run again as president. He said a couple of things he intends to do when he wins the election. One, he intends to scrap payment of ex gratia under Article 71. He will assemble less than 60 ministers, deputies, if he wins. He believes Ghana needs an experienced leader, one that has been president before. And of course, he spoke about the fact that he's not happy that President Akufo-Addo is not doing well. But let's start with the launch proper. We saw regional chairmen declaring their support for him. Comes back to the issue we raised, I think 2 weeks ago.
I find that, again, very unpalatable. And unfortunately, they were back at it, doing it gleefully in the eyes of the public. Basically, I would lean on what I said previously here last week. That, look, we cannot continue like this as a country. Then we must show a certain responsibility. And that is where I will leave it. But on the substance of the launch itself, I think it was significant, it was great, and it brought back a certain dignity around President John Dramani Mahama. The reason being that, in my view, he said almost everything that the Ghanaian today wants to hear. The question is, can he be trusted?
Yeah.
He was there for well over 4 years, having taken over from his boss, who died ahead of the 2012 elections. Yeah. And he was raised unopposed as the NDC's candidate for the elections. He went in, won the elections. Of course, the expectations of Ghanaians were that he was going to be a huge and transformational leader. We can credit him for some of the significant major infrastructural developments that he put up. There's no question about that. The question, though, that people raise is whether those projects really were to the benefit of Ghanaians. I mean, nobody can contest the fact that the University of Ghana Hospital. It's a fantastic idea because we rely on it now a lot. The Bank of Ghana Hospital, I'm not too sure if it's now in full operation.
It is.
The Ridge Hospital. There have been questions around the cost of these projects. But so many years after the MPP came to power, we have not found any real evidence as to say that people exactly they were because if the evidence was there, perhaps by now we should have seen it. So in terms of the additions that he made to Ghana's development, they are clear. He made significant contribution to the development of Ghana. But he also caused retrogression in many aspects of our governance life. And there are specific examples to cite. For instance, this whole Muntie 3 matter, it was a huge slap in the face of the judiciary for a president, a former member of parliament, a former minister of state, a former vice president, to exercise executive authority, his right to use prerogative of mercy, to free people who had been convicted for saying very unprintable and unpalatable things about members of the judiciary. So that for me was a huge step. And I can count many other examples. So he says he's learned his lessons, but can he be trusted?
What's your answer to that?
You see, I think that I'll leave that to the people of Ghana to decide. Because, look, some people will say that Sekwatikwa C, Obema or Antuma. Yeah. Some people will say
this
that.
Man, I don't want to give it as a proverb.
But I don't want to say that. I want to believe that. But it is up to Ghanaians to decide whether looking at everything, because look, I looked at the speech, I read it, I listened to him, and I found a sense of I think he touched the right spots. For instance, the Article 71 provisions, he wants to do away with it. It is not an entrenched provision. If you read Article 290 of the Constitution, it's not listed as one of the entrenched provisions. So you can put in place a motion put in motion an effort to amend it without necessarily having to go back to the people to hold a referendum. And Parliament can do it with the necessary conditions being met. So the question we should ask ourselves is, should we do away with it? These are some of the things people are talking about. The size of government is too big.
So it's telling us what we want.
So that's what I'm saying.
To the trust
that, look, he said all the fantastic things that Ghanaians want to hear, like all politicians in opposition. But the question is, given his history, can he be trusted? That is the question that Ghanaians would
Okay, Salom, I'll take your point on that, but let me take a quick break. And then when I come back, I'll take Salom's assertions on this particular matter, on the ex-president's launch of his bid. Do stay with us. We'll be right back.
It's City on the Go. You don't have to miss any of your favorite television and radio shows on City TV and City FM. Enjoy thrilling content from your world of great television and relevant radio at your convenience. Subscribe to CityTube on YouTube, turn on your notification button, and receive prompts on our live streaming sessions and new content uploads. For easy access to the CityTube page, scan the QR code on your screens, subscribe to the CityTube page, and voila! Unlimited content awaits you. Don't forget to subscribe to CityTube for amazing content from City TV and City FM.
Welcome back to What the Papers Are Saying. My name is Vivian Kai. Look, I'm here with Richard Sky and Selam Adonu. We're wrapping up the conversation around the big stories for the week, and we're currently looking at former President John Mahama, who launched his bid to run again for president for the next general elections. And we're looking at matters around that launch proper. Selam, Sky believes he said the right things. His speech was fantastic, touched on most of the key issues that whether the middle class, the elite, even the people on the streets are discussing. Cut the size of government, be prudent in your spending, deal with corruption. He said all the nice things. The question is, would he do these things when he comes back? When they're in opposition, they say the nice things. When they're in government, they tell us what they like.
So I mean, fantastic. That's really the problem. That's really the problem. So our current situation as a country is a symptom of that problem. In opposition, you say the very nice things, but when you come to power, you become something. The size of government and all of those things were spoken about in the past. But first time, come 121, 122 ministers, and we are at it. So, you come, take it from a lower point to a higher point, and now you are bringing it back to where you took it from. Now it becomes like an achievement. We have to clap for you. Meanwhile, you've not done anything because you are just bringing it back to where you took it from. So John Mahama, I think, said all the right things. And obviously, he knows that he's looking way beyond the NDC primaries. The speech was not a speech for a primary election necessarily. It was as if it was a national campaign launch. The message was like that because he obviously knows that, I mean, he's no match for Kwabena Duffuor. He's no match for Kojo Bonsu. He's no match for
the business.
I mean, he's no match for any of them. And so he's looking at it from a bigger picture. He's taking on either Alan Chermantin or what's the name? Dr. Bawumia or Kennedy Japo, any of them, frontally, and dealing with the record of the party, trying to, to curate the message that he is not happy that Nana-Addo has failed. So he's passed a verdict on him that he's failed. But he's passed the verdict, but he's quickly saying that he is not happy that he has failed because once Nana-Addo fails, it is Ghana that has failed. It is beyond the personality or the person of Nana-Addo. If he fails, Ghana has failed, and he is not happy with that. He made a similar point at UPSA also when he said that, ordinarily, he should have been gloating over it, that his opponent was failing, etc. But this was not the time for that. He said all those nice things, which I think are commendable. He's a politician, and we say he's a good communicator. He said all of that. But we want to see what his real message will be. We want to see what alternatives he will put on the table when the campaign itself starts. We want to see whether we will approach this campaign with a bit more seriousness than the EDB and all those things. A lot of people want to see a lot of those. They want to see the alternatives they put on the table. They want to see, all of these. When we know that this is, of course, he did a few things right, a few other things not right. He was punished for it. But when it comes with his messaging, and we realize, this guy is a new person now, maybe we can think about, giving it back to him. But as we stand now, he needs to work hard, and I think when he works hard, he may most likely do it.
Okay, I'll stay with another around elections. We just have about 2 minutes to go. The Nigerian elections. Bola Tinubu is president-elect of Nigeria. Were you expecting that?
Well, I mean, given the buzz that was around Peter Obi, my expectation was that he was going to bring a certain force of change, which change would do away with the old, dinosaurs who have been in charge of Nigeria and who have failed to provide the kind of leadership that would make Nigeria the true giant of Africa and take us out of the problems we see. Unfortunately, Peter Obi fell short of what was constitutionally required to become the president of Nigeria, coming third to Atiku and then also the eventual winner, Bola Tinubu. Of course, there have been serious issues with how the elections in Nigeria have been conducted. The international community, in terms of the observers who have gone there, have expressed serious misgivings, regarding how the elections were conducted, how people were chased away, how people were slaughtered days before the elections, how people were beaten, how the system was actually, frustrated. You understand? People couldn't go and vote because for some reason electoral, rules or the items needed to conduct elections didn't come early,
materials.
or the election officials didn't arrive early, or when they even arrived, they were now waiting for posters or certain things to be pasted, and then they were now educating voters. You don't come and educate voters at the polling. Yes, you do that days before. You carry out serious messaging to ensure that they understand what they have to go and do. So
you don't even do that when you are late. When you are hours late.
Can you imagine?
You don't do that when you are hours late.
2 a.m. people were still
came
voting.
early, fine, you could do that. But
2 a.m.
Hours late.
I am really disappointed because they sank a lot of money into reforming the system, making sure that the law actually creates the right environment for elections to be credible, free, fair, and transparent. Unfortunately, I cannot say that they were able to achieve that with its implementation, and that is a major blot. And I will not be surprised if the opposition parties decide to take up this matter at the Nigerian Supreme Court.
Well, they're saying they are going to court and do the protests and all that, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, I think it was an election that promised a lot. It was a well-fought election, very a lot of energy in there, a lot of bigger from Peter Obi. But, that's what it is. No party structures, didn't get into the race quite early and all of that. So that was to be expected. When I saw the final, popular votes, I think he did quite well. 6.1 million against Atiku, who's been there forever, 6.9. And Tinubu, who's been godfather to all of them, 8 point something. I think Peter Obi has brought something. Whether he can sustain that into the next election will be another problem, or remains to be seen. If he's able to sustain that to the next election, then, and I don't know whether he will still have that youthful appeal 4 years on, that will remain to be seen. But a few things stood out for me. How the Nigerian society is starkly divided among ethnic and religious lines. How the spread of the votes was. The north, the southness, etc. So you see a lot of Obi's people voting for him, and he got just that. Bola Tinubu's people voting for him, and Atiku's people. Yeah. Interestingly, the makeup of Tinubu disturbed Atiku. Tinubu is a Muslim, but he's a Yoruba. He's a Muslim from the south. Yeah. So if you want a Muslim, he is a Muslim if you're a Northerner. But a Southerner to he's a Southerner, just that he's a Muslim. Yeah. So I think it confused the votes, and that was the difficulty Atiku faced. The other point too is that could Atiku and Obi, or could they have maintained their partnership? I mean, they used 4 years ago where Obi was running mate to. If that had been retained or maintained, Atiku Obi would have been going to Aso Rock today, because if you put their votes together,
you wouldn't.
But
that's a possibility.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But the difficulty there would have been that would Obi have had the expression he had, because now he was running on his own. He was running with his own message. If he was going with Atiku, he would have been dwarfed a bit by the Atiku message. So he would have been playing the role of a running mate. I mean, all these are things which should have played out. But another point we also need to make is how active the youth and ensure that the sleeping giant Nigeria is
wakes up.
Here.
All right. Thank you guys very much, Richard Delaska and Stella Madonu. Thank you so much for joining us. And also, thank you to you, our viewers, for joining us. My name is Vivian Kailoko. Remember to make it Ghana in everything you do.Ghana first. I bought some for the two of you. I don't know why you don't have it. Why do you want to embarrass me on TV? Why are you behaving like?
You should present it to us so that the good people of Ghana know that you are giving us.
We are making it Ghana.
Yeah, they are sharing the team.
Hey, Tafwa, if you are watching, go and give them the tea.